Dominating the front pages of newspapers worldwide. Let's start in Hong Kong itself. The South China Morning Post devotes much of its edition to the clashes and quotes one of the protest leaders as saying the movement is now out of their control. China Daily's front page headline refers to the demonstrations as an illegal assembly and goes on to quote Hong Kong's chief executive as saying the protests will be handled in accordance with the law. The Straits Times reports that the democracy protests turned the heart of Hong Kong into a battlefield as riot police faced off with demonstrators and claims that police officers used their batons to push back protesters who came at them with umbrellas. And take a look at this. The front page of the Financial Times puts also Hong Kong on there, showing puffs of tear gas hanging in the air outside of police headquarters.
You're watching Newsday on the BBC. I'm Sharonjit Lail in Singapore.
I'm Babita Sharma in London. The headlines for you this hour. Hong Kong's protests escalate. Thousands are continuing to defy police and the authorities as they call for full democracy.
And the Islamic State advance into Iraq. Some militants are now less than 10 kilometers from Baghdad. Returning to our top story now, some of those dramatic images we saw at the start of the programme of those protesters being tear-gassed in Hong Kong. We can now be joined by Jerome Taylor. He's an AFP journalist based in Hong Kong and he's been following the protests. He joins me now on the line. Now, Jerome, I believe these protesters are still out there this Monday morning, continuing those protests from the weekend. You had some trouble getting into work this morning, into where you are in Causeway Bay. Can you tell us how difficult it is for many of these Monday morning commuters trying to get into work?
Well, it largely depends where they are on the island. Most of the underground train network is working, so people are able to use that. But the protesters have taken over some pretty significant thoroughfares in an already congested city, and it's those routes that are basically blocked, with some tram services suspended and some buses suspended too.
Now, we know these large protests have been taking place since the middle of the year, since July, but just how unusual is it to see tear gas and pepper spray being used against these protesters?
It's not necessarily all that unusual to see pepper spray deployed. We have seen that before, but tear gas is certainly a rarity. The last time was around about 2005 during some WTO protests. So the tear gas has been a major ratcheting up of tensions. It really turned the atmosphere from relatively exuberant and enthusiastic to outraged and angry overnight.
Right. And now, in terms of the protesters, you know, we're seeing these live images now, and they are still gathering Monday. But if we take a look at these organisers, the Hong Kong Federation of Students, they've appealed for students to actually retreat. There's a fear that rubber bullets may be used, but is there any sign that perhaps students are heeding these instructions?
Not really. I mean, when you walk around this morning, it seems like the protesters have the streets in the sections that where they're present. The police seem to have backed off. There's been, as far as we know, there hasn't been rubber bullets deployed. We haven't seen any substantiated evidence of that. It was more a warning from protest leaders that if they felt their supporters' lives were in danger, they could withdraw. It was an option. But in fact, the opposite happened. More people came out and took over different sections of Hong Kong, and the protests spread.
All right, we'll leave it there. Jerome Taylor there from AFP. Thanks for joining us there. Now, over in Japan, a search operation for climbers still missing.